Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As. So let's get this started. First question. I've seen you training in vibrams. Do you think they provide any benefit, or are they just good for deadlifting? In fact, I have a lot of pairs of vibrams. These are just the ones right by my desk. I got this pair. Oops, there's one of my toe socks stuck to them. I got this pair, and I got more of them somewhere else in the closet. I do love my vibrams. I don't love them for lifting. I don't love them for any sort of weird reason that people think they're therapeutic. I just find them really comfortable. I find them really easy to walk in since I do all my grocery shopping and things like that on foot. They're just comfortable walking shoes. I really like them. I think they are fantastic for deadlifting also. And since I wear them all the time anyways, I wear them for that. The only time I change shoes is when I want to put some sort of squat shoes on, or I have like a formal occasion to where I need to wear leather shoes or something. So they're my go-to shoes. That's why you see me training in them. I do happen to think they're good for deadlifting. For some people, they may be good for squatting, actually. But that depends on the individual. Anyone who squats best with a flat sole, like who squats really well in Chucks instead of weightlifting shoes, for example, just due to their mobility and squat style, vibrams would be good to go. They're a good replacement for Chucks. They work just as well. But I like them just for the sheer comfort. And some people think they're ugly. Other people, they think they look really stylish and trendy. I happen to like the look. What other people think about that, I don't really care. Although people do comment on them when I'm out in public sometimes. All right, next question. Footwear to squat in. Anything that's not okay. Yeah, this goes back to the other question. Generally for squatting, you want something with a hard sole. You either want to be flat-heeled, or you want an elevated heel, again, depending upon your individual mobility, the range of motion on your hips, your squat style, things like that. So it's really going to vary quite a bit from person to person. You have to experiment around sometimes to find what actually works best for you. And even sometimes when it comes to lifting shoes, some people like a more elevated heel than others. The only thing that is really not okay is anything with a soft heel. Running shoes, walking shoes, jogging shoes, tennis shoes, your Air Jordans, that stuff is out. That will potentially, not only potentially injure you in some cases, you will have less heel drive out of the bottom. You will lose power out of the bottom as a result of it, and you won't be able to squat as much weight oftentimes once you have your technique dialed in. And it'll teach you basically bad technique. If you ever do go to do a meet or anything, you're going to lift less weight as a result of it. But the thing is, as you get stronger, things like that start to get to the point where you can bust the cushioning or the air pockets and things like that in the shoes. And when you've got a heavy weight on your back, that busting and that shifting of that weight could potentially injure you. That's not a situation where you want something like that to happen. So there's the potential for injury also. So any sort of running, jogging, tennis shoes, basketball shoes, they're out completely. You need something with a hard heel, as hard as possible. All right, next question. What do you think has caused the shift from training for aesthetics to training for strength? Well, this has been kind of a recent thing again. There's a lot of factors involved. I think YouTube has played a role. I think we had this big shift in aesthetics again for a little while, come back up. Since I kind of came back to the internet and started trying to get back into the training world, we did see this resurgence of that. I think guys like Z's and like Men's Physique becoming more popular made a lot more people start doing that. But I think a lot of strength-based channels have come out and pushed stuff in the other direction. I think guys like Omar Issoff, Johnny Candido, even to some extent guys like C.T. Fletcher being on YouTube have pushed that back in the other direction. I also think, as much as I hate to say it, I think CrossFit, with its really far outreach and focus on functional strength, barbell work, has also pushed the training community back in that direction to some extent. There's a lot of overlapping factors, and I think also the people starting to realize again with this current generation, this goes in cycles, this current generation has realized again that all the things that they're seeing as aesthetics is actually drugs and genetics. It's not something they can always train for to the extent that they think they can, whereas in drugs add a lot more to aesthetics than they add to strength. I'm not saying they don't affect strength, but they do not affect strength, particularly on a pound for pound basis, relative to your body weight, anywhere near to the degree that they can affect aesthetics. And so as people are starting to learn, it's more of a drug thing that is giving the aesthetics, and more people are kind of not drinking the natty bodybuilding Kool-Aid anymore, or all these fitness models who are screaming that they're natty. I think there is more of a focus of people realizing that strength is something that is going to be more obtainable for them, either without drugs or on far more conservative amounts of drugs for people who choose to use them. In addition to the fact that it is becoming more apparent as more of us speak out, and definitely I'm not the only one. There are people with more voice, bigger voice than me, who say the same things of getting the ultra ripped look just isn't healthy. And it makes your life miserable. So for a lot of people, depending upon how your hormones are affected by it. So these are all factors that are playing a role. All right, next question. If I don't hit my macros one day, can I make up for them the following morning? Yeah, you can do this. However, it may not always balance out as well as you might like. I wouldn't recommend getting into the habit of this. It is important to remember that your digestion in your body doesn't really work on a 24-hour cycle. That some foods, it can take you up to 48 to 72 hours to fully break down and digest, but you still get most of it in the first day, usually in the first 8 hours. Depending upon the food, but there is always that trickle down, and it can take up to 3 days to get all the calories out of something. So you do have some wiggle room there, but I really wouldn't make a habit out of it just because it can give you some disordered eating. I would try to keep eating patterns fairly regular just to avoid things like binging and purging cycles that can develop, and inconsistencies like that can contribute to that for people who are prone to those things. So I would recommend trying to keep a slightly more consistent eating pattern if possible. But if it happens on occasion, once a week, probably not a big deal. Just roll with it. It probably isn't going to make a real difference. All right, next question. Hey, Jason, in your video about squatting to parallel, you said that statistically a good portion of the population is not built to squat deeper than parallel. How do you know if it is safe for you to squat deeper than parallel, and what happens if someone who is not built to squat deeper than parallel does? Thanks. There's a number of signs there you can look for. So a lot of times this could be done if you did full x-rays of your pelvis from different sides. You can oftentimes tell that some people, they have actual bones that are cause problems with doing that, so you can actually impinge bones and things by going too deep. That's going to be a smaller minority of people, but just some people you can see it on the x-rays. There's a lot of variation in the human hip structure. It's tremendous. That's why different people squat better with different squat stances. It actually has to do with their physical structure of their hips. And they vary dramatically even inside individual ethnic groups. So that's one factor to consider there. What I would look at is, first of all, then if you squat really deep in various stances and your hips actually physically hurt no matter how narrow or wide the stance goes, if you squat deeper than parallel, that's probably a dead giveaway immediately. What I would also look at is that after someone has done proper mobility work, they've been doing mobility work, stretching, things like that for at least a month, if you have them squatting below parallel and you video them from the side, and when they go below parallel, using high bar and low bar, narrow stance, medium stance, wide stance, if all of those situations, no matter what they do, they don't find a position to where their lower back doesn't round dramatically at the bottom, that person may not be built to go any deeper than parallel. I would stop them right at parallel or just a hair under, like maybe powerlifting meet legal depth. I wouldn't have those people do full squats. They're probably, the risk to reward payoff for those people probably isn't worth it. All right, next question. What is the main reason you don't like split workouts, even for the intermediate advanced? Do you think it is a waste, or is it another reason? I do recall you said something about 100% effort on squat day, but is that the only reason? I have a lot of reasons, but number one on the list is the dogmatic approach of it. When I go to train, I don't want to be told, and when I'm programming for an athlete, I don't want an athlete to tell me I can't train a certain body part or movement on this day because it's not the correct day for it. It's completely arbitrary. Body part splits are really arbitrary in the sense of they're designed for organizational reasons for the human mind, because we like to organize things. They're not always designed at all around any sort of functional pattern or logical, physiological reason. That's the issue. They're done for psychological reasons. And if you keep them there as a tool, a loose tool for that, they're not really so bad, particularly for guys on a lot of drugs. Sure, they can split things up a lot better because they benefit from much higher volumes of training, and accordingly, they might need more recovery time. So you can split those things up a little more. They make more sense for people on hefty amounts of drugs. But they become a problem when you start going dogmatically, well, today is back day or today is bench press day, but your body and your nervous system and your lower body is recovered enough that you could squat, and you need to improve on your squat, and you don't squat that day. That's the problem. They're dogmatic. And when I say full body, I mean that at least you can come in and train any and every lift that you want to if you're recovered enough to do so and everything is functioning and your strength is okay on those lifts. And that's the way you should always do any major lift or exercise or body part that you need to bring up. You should be training it as frequently as your recovery will allow you to get away with. And in some cases that could mean every single day, and in some cases that could mean twice a day, every single day. So splitting things up in an organized pattern doesn't always allow for you to properly train what needs to be getting the most work. I would be okay with a body part split for someone who really needs to hammer their squat if they allow them to go ahead and squat 5 days a week, 6 days a week, while doing all the other stuff behind it and still calling it a split. There's the issue. My biggest problem with it. All right, next question. What's your thoughts on trap bar deadlifts versus rack pulls below the knee if you're not competing and want to spare your lower back? So we're coming down to here general fitness, or possibly some sort of field athlete or strength athlete who isn't concerned about performing the deadlift in any sort of competition. So in that case, and let's say they do have a fatigue issue with their lower back, maybe the lower back fatigue is interfering with their ability to train all their big lifts as frequently as they might want, and they want to pull the conventional deadlift out, or even pull the sumo deadlift out, anything that is hammering their lower back. The rack pull, particularly rack pull below the knee, would not be my go-to fix. That isn't going to solve that issue at all. All that's going to do is pull more hamstring out of it. It could, in some cases, beat your lower back up just as much, if not more. I would go, in that case, for that person, if you've got a trap bar, the trap bar deadlift would probably be my first choice for that, because it does put less stress upon the spinal erectors and the lower back than pretty much any other deadlift variation of which I'm aware, so that would make it the superior tool for your goal. And in fact, I like the trap bar deadlift for field athletes. Oftentimes, for like a football player or a rugby player, I would consider the trap bar deadlift over a regular barbell even year-round for them if they have any issues whatsoever with lower back recovery. Because they don't have to be able to deadlift with an Olympic bar to be good at their sport. They just need to build that kinetic chain up. All right, next question. Jason, what do you believe in? Where did you seek strength when facing adversity in life? How did you get yourself out of your depression? That's a good question, because a lot of you do know I did suffer severe depression when I was sick and in bed for a really long time. I couldn't train for 3 years. I've now been training again 3 years. Finally, I've been able to train. I got medical clearance to train again, but I was deeply depressed. So what do I believe in and where do I draw strength from? Some of you may or may not know I am agnostic. I don't consider myself a true atheist. I have that big I don't know. I accept the possibility there are spiritual things out there. There are higher powers. I don't see evidence of them. I don't actively really believe in any as a result of that. So where do I draw strength from? From myself. I believe in myself. I have inside of me a strong will to live, a strong desire to survive in some form or another, irrespective of what's going on. And how does someone else develop that? I don't know. It's just something that I have, and I believe in myself. And that is ultimately where I draw strength. Maybe it's a sign of having a high ego. Maybe it's a mark of being egotistical. But it has kept me alive in a lot of situations in my life where I think a lot of other people would have rolled over and died. And in situations where I have seen other people basically roll over and die, that has given me the strength to go on. It's just believing in myself. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.